The Geoffroy family name is historically connected to the village of Cumières in the Vallée de la Marne, where the family has been wine growing since the 17th century. Today, Jean-Baptiste Geoffroy represents the fifth generation, overseeing 14 hectares of vineyards. In the 1970s, Jean-Baptiste's father René made the audacious decision to use most of their grapes for their own production under their own label René Geoffroy, instead of supplying the big houses. They produce fruit-forward, flavoursome and intensely mineral champagnes that somehow produce the verve required for massive aging potential, instead of just immediate drinking appeal, which is often the case for wines coming from Cumières. Today, Jean-Baptiste is joined by his daughter Sasha, who is working hand in glove with her father to perpetuate the legacy of the family into the future. It was my privilege to sit down with both of them recently in Champagne for this interview. So Jean-Baptiste and Sasha, welcome. It's great to have you with us here today. So Jean-Baptiste and Sasha, your family history in Cumières dates back to the 17th century. In your case, Jean-Baptiste, you joined the winery in the 1980s before relocating your old Cumières facility to a more spacious address in Ailly in 2008. You have around 14 hectares primarily located in Cumières, but you also have holdings in Damery, Vallée, Fleury, La Rivière. One of the things that impresses me about you is the quality of your fruit, but also that you ensure quality right throughout the process of winemaking. Cumières fruit is a very important part of your domain's DNA. It's a very specific terroir located on the banks of the Marne River with full southern exposure. So what is the historical connection to the village for your family?
So thank you, Sarah. And it's possible to find the roots of the family from a very, as we explained you, at the end of the 17th century. And the connection, it's really from my great grandfather. He started at the beginning of the 19th century to do the cultivation of the vineyard. Mm-hmm. And the first in the family who decided to do himself his wine has been my grandfather. So we are just after the Second War in the 1950 approximately. And after, a long time only for the cultivation of the vineyard, he decided to create his own brand. It was René Geoffroy. And after my father, René, continued the work of his father. And I came back at the end of the 80s to continue the work of the family, the generation by generation. And Sasha now is here. She came back last year to start to work with all the family in the same business.
Yeah. Well, I'll talk to Sasha in a moment just about her own vision and her journey into this domain with you and your wife, Corinne. But I wanted to just keep the focus a little bit on Cumières at the moment because I know how important it is going to be, well, it is for this discussion, but also for your champagnes. So what kind of terroir is Cumières? Because I feel as though it's such an incredible terroir. Almost anything is possible from here. And you can definitely see that in your champagnes. You have incredible diversity, so many variables that you can play with. So can you maybe describe for people listening what that terroir really is?
Yes, so we are very happy to be in Cumières and to continue. So we are in Ailly. I explained you we are in Ailly now, but our DNA is really from the terroir of Cumières because it's the origin of the family, and we have almost all our vineyard in Cumières. And in Cumières, the particularity of Cumières, we are in the Marne Valley, is a slopes only south facing, and a lot of different kind of soil, very complex soil. It depends if you are on the top of the vineyard, close of the forest, or the middle of the vineyard. After, it's possible to be very close of the river. So sometimes it's more sandy. Sometimes we have some balcony of the vineyard. It's very chalky, where we have the Chardonnay in general. And on the middle of the terroir, you have a very, very beautiful line of clay, where we have the Pinot Noir. So it's really, really different. And for us is a very beautiful richness to have this soil because it's possible to do a beautiful champagne with only Pinot Noir, Blanc de Noir, one with only Chardonnay, Blanc de Blanc. We have a single plot in Pinot Meunier. We have a single plot in a field blend. So it's very diverse. So it's very interesting and Cumières in general is one of the first village to start the Champagne, the harvest in Champagne because it's completely south facing. So it's always very ripe.
Yeah. No, it's incredible terroir. But
Yeah.
what I love about how you use that terroir is that you somehow manage to keep freshness and a mineral aspect in everything that you do, irrespective of the varietal and where it's grown. And I feel like with Cumières, it can very easily lend itself to that richer profile and becomes quite big quite quickly. But somehow you manage to retain the mineral aspect in what you do. So it's really quite fascinating. So I wanted to get on to you, Sasha, as well. So Jean-Baptiste, you have 5 daughters, which is hats off to you and your wife, because that's a lot of work. I have 3 boys, so 5 daughters, I think you win. And they will obviously be successes, obviously, of your estate in due course. So Sasha, you are particularly hands-on in the vineyard and in the winery, and your passion is very clear in what you do. You work very closely with your parents in maintaining the quality of the domain. So what is your role specifically, and how do you work alongside your parents?
Okay. So yes, as I said, as my father said, I came back 1 year ago. So before I was doing harvest in other country and with lots of different people and lots of different approach. But what I noticed in my experience was that the work in the vineyards is one of the most important things to do wines with emotion and with...
So what attracted you to be involved? You know, what was really appealing to you?
Yeah. So my first idea when I came back was to involve myself a lot in the vineyards. I really want to understand each different plots in Cumières, in Damery, and in Fleury, because if we want to speak about different terroir of Champagne, I have to understand all. And also in our house, we have quite old team in the vineyards that know every details of the plots, and I learned a lot with them. So yes, I think for the 10 next year, I really want to be an expert of the terroir of Cumières, and I will really understand what I will want to do in the future for the wine. Also.
Yeah, because Sasha worked during 5 years before to come back here in a different country, in Switzerland, Argentina, Italy, and France. But when she came back at home, she didn't know really, because when she left the Champagne, she was young. So she didn't know, she never worked with us. So now it's the good time, slowly, to learn more about each plot. Because when you do the plow in a plot, it will be different between Les Collines d'Ardin or Les Tiercaudes, because it's a completely different soil, and you have to learn this.
Yeah.
Slowly.
And yes, it's a slow approach, so you have to begin very early if you want to change some little specific things.
So you're being mentored by obviously your parents, but you have people that work for you, help you to understand the lay of the land. And, yeah, that's really impressive. So at your domain, I wanted to get more onto maybe some of the decisions that go into the winemaking process. So you do use oak vessels of varying sizes and ages. You also prevent malolactic fermentation for the most part. You avoid fine infiltration. The expression sees ripe fruit flavors, but also freshness from key saline elements, and supported by incredibly low or no dosage, which is also super remarkable. So can you talk us through your philosophy? What is driving this?
Yes. So the philosophy is to respect the most possible the grapes, the grapes of the harvest, and after to do, if it's possible, the minimum with the wine. So the minimum with the wine is first of all to work with the naturalists. So with a very soft first débourbage. The débourbage is the first settling of the juice. So we want to keep a lot of matière in the juice, and after we do the beginning of the alcoholic fermentation with naturalists. So for that we do a starter, but from our vineyard. So 2 weeks before the beginning of the harvest, we are going in all the different plots of the vineyard to pick up some different cluster. We press by the foot, and we put in a hot atmosphere to help at the beginning of the natural starter, that fermentation. And after we are going to use this to dispatch in all the different barrels or different vats.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the philosophy, it's to take the most natural as possible. And, so very low level of sulfites, no fining, natural yeast, no filtration.
Mm-hmm.
Malolactic is depend. Sometimes, if it's possible to avoid it, we avoid, but sometimes it's not easy because as we have low sulfites, it's more easy for the natural bacteria to start, even if it's a low level of lactic acid in natural juice, as 18, as 23. So when it's like this, is a natural process. So we don't do nothing. We leave the wine.
So do you find you've obviously got this stylistic aspiration and you seem to be really trying to listen to what the wine's telling you, what it really wants to do. But do you find that sometimes things are changing in ways that maybe you don't expect because of variables coming into play like climate change? Is this presenting some, I don't know, challenges for you as wine growers and winemakers around, how you maintain those stylistic aspirations given the challenges?
I think in the vinification process, we see some new challenges that we didn't have before. For example, sometimes the problem when it's a hot year and when you enter too much warm grapes, that's not very comfortable area for the yeast. And sometimes the bacteria of the malolactic develop faster than the yeast. So the malolactic starts before or at the same time of the alcoholic fermentation. And at this point, that's quite difficult because you can have boom of lactic acidity and volatile. So you have to, I think for the vinification process, we have to be very rigorous and strict with the temperature. With the
temperature, and we control every day the level of the sugar to be sure the alcoholic fermentation continues slowly. Because in general, if we speak about the malolactic fermentation, the bacteria are more active than the yeasts.
Yeah.
So it's a balance. It's a balance. We test, we analyze, and we are not, I don't know in English, on n'est pas up to, not to like this.
Yeah, not too straight.
Not too straight, because if for 1 or 2 barrels is necessary to add some selection yeast to finish off alcoholic fermentation, we are going to do.
Yeah, you just have to remain.
Yeah. The goal is to have a great wine.
not to be dogmatic, right?
Yeah, dogmatic, exactly. It's dogmatic.
You try as hard as you can to maintain what is, I guess, that aspiration, but then you have to be pragmatic.
Pragmatic and not dogmatic.
Yes.
Exactly.
You still want wine at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, Sasha, then my question for you is, you mentioned you have traveled quite extensively and you would have experienced, I guess, different wine growers who have come into some challenges of their own, some maybe alternative ideas, and knowing what you know about your own domain, have you brought to the domain any of your own thinking around, where you could possibly shift the wine growing or the winemaking?
Yes. So that's quite funny because when I wanted to go out of Champagne and of the family, my father said to me, if you want one day to do a great Champagne, you have to know how to make great red wine. And at the beginning, I don't really understand why he was saying that. But after my experience, I really understand, specifically after Burgundy, because for red wine, if you want to do great red wine, you have to be very strict in the vineyards and you have no choice to enter good quality of grapes because there is no direct press. You have a maceration site, so you have to be very precise. So during my experience, I was doing a lot of red wines everywhere, not a lot of bubbles. No. And at the end, that was nice because that was another opening for me. And specifically in the vineyards.
Yes.
For example, I was working with Charles Lachaud in Vosne-Romanée. And with him, I really learned a new perspective of working in the vineyards with the Pinot Noir. we started to not cut the apex anymore and to let the vine growing its own cycle. I've learned also high density in the vineyards.
And I think too, growing vines for the purpose of making still wine is incredibly different to growing vines for, sparkling wine production. And so, it's, I guess, historically in Champagne, the focus has never been on still wine production. It's always been on the bubbles, right? So it's great that you've had that different kind of exposure at the very early stages of your career.
Yes, because I think the point in Champagne before was really on the winemaking process before. And more, we are more focused on the vine making process. So for me, that was really interesting. And the most important, even if it's sparkling or still, is to have an healthy plant, I think.
Yes, and to jump for the question, it's the problem. It's the yield. It's the yield. It's possible to have so in Champagne we speak only with the kilo by hectare, not in hectoliters by hectare. And it's possible to have a good champagne, a very good champagne with 10,000 kilo per hectare. It's impossible to have a great red wine, a Coteau Champenois Rouge, with 10,000 kilo per hectare. So you have to work in the vineyard to focus to have 6,000 kilo per hectare. So it means 35 hectoliters. So maximum. But it's impossible to have a great red wine in Champagne with a high yield. So it's why with Sasha, we decided to change the method of the cultivation with the high vine, no cut the apex, as I explained you, to get the phenolic maturity at the same time as the sugar maturity.
Yeah. And balanced with the yield.
And balanced the wine.
Yeah, that's right. So I do remember one of the first times that I met you was we were coming out of COVID and you and your wife, Corinne, had invited me to your domain for a traditional harvest lunch, which is always so delicious because Corinne is such an amazing cook. But I remember specifically shadowing you for the day as you produced your Blanc de Rosé maceration, and it was such a fascinating insight into a very unique approach because I haven't seen any other producer make a maceration quite like this. It is without doubt one of the most unique methods, involving a 50-50 mille-feuille style arrangement of Chardonnay Pinot Noir skin contact, where they macerate in oak vats using fruit exclusively from Cumières. So you also use carbonic gas for protection, which also means less sulfites, which is also an aspiration of yours. I find it to be a particularly pretty rosé. It's always more delicate, it's more floral. So I would like to know from you, what inspired you to come up with a concept like this?
Alors, this concept, from a very long time, from the beginning of the story of the family, we do a Rosé de Saignée, but only from the Pinot Noir. We never once in our house do a Rosé by blend. It's a kind of a DNA of the family. And in 2004, it was a large harvest in Champagne. And we had some
excess fruit.
Excess fruits. So I said, it's a good time, it's a good year to experiment something different. And in my mind, it was to have a rosé, to try to have a rosé always by Saignée, but with more floral taste, more minerality, more citrus. So to get all this kind of aroma is necessary to use the Chardonnay. But as is not in our philosophy to blend the two color of wine just before bottling, I decided to do a new method of rosé. It was a co-maceration as a millefeuille of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So we did a few bottles. We did a vat in 2004, and I bottled a few bottles to sparkling. Only for after the year after, I did a lot of testing with all my wine grower friends. And after 4 years, everybody said, wow, it's unique, it's beautiful. I think it was a new style of rosé. And in the year 2008, the first year here in Haï, we decided to create the first bottle of Blanc de Rose with the 2008. At the beginning, I didn't know if it was allowed to do this because, in Champagne, it's forbidden to do white champagne from the maceration of the Chardonnay. But in this one, it was half a Chardonnay, half a Pinot Noir, and the result is not white, but is pink.
Yes.
So I'm a little bit borderline for the Champagne's rules, but it's okay.
But it's okay.
Yeah.
It's passable.
Yeah.
I'm so happy it's passable because benefiting from it. It is unique. But it must also be high risk and a little bit more complex to manage that millefeuille style of maceration. Are there any sort of, I guess, challenges to making sure that they're going to be macerating in different ways? Co-macerating the Chardonnay with the Pinot.
Yes, it is not so difficult. It's at the beginning, the first experimentation I did, it was with 60% of Pinot Noir and 40% of 2004.
Yeah.
Was 60% of Pinot Noir and 40% of Chardonnay. And for the next vintage, I decided to reduce the Pinot Noir to have only 50-50. After, it's the same work than the traditional rosé from our house, 100% Pinot Noir. It's almost at the same time of the maceration phase. So it's not short time because you have to know why we take the cluster.
Mm-hmm.
We put the cluster with our machine to distemp.
Yes.
And we have a very old machine, but very nice machine because we keep the woolberries. And as we keep the woolberries, we need more time to extract all the best of the berries. So the color, but also all the flavors. If you have a machine to destroy all the skin at the beginning, after one day you have the color and you have not enough flavors.
Yeah.
So it's why we prefer to take our time. Yeah. So it's a maceration phase of 3-4 days. So it's not short. But like this, it's very slow and always just before the beginning, because after 4 days, you have the beginning of the alcoholic fermentation with the natural yeast. So always before the beginning of the alcoholic fermentation, we remove the juice from the contact of the thing. We do the bleeding to have this rosé.
Yeah, it's a nice slow extraction process, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you rack off the juice and then obviously you're co-fermenting the juice. And so do you think that because they've co-macerated that you get like a softer expression of tannin?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. We have less Pinot Noir and we have less extraction of the tannin and we have a beautiful ID of the Chardonnay. So it's why this Blanc de Rose, when you taste, is more floral. You have in general the flower of the rose. After that, in the full blend, you have a small spice as saffron.
Exotic.
More exotic. The color is as a salmon and not too much red. And at the end of the taste is a beautiful bitterness of the grapefruit.
Yeah.
And in general, the Blanc de Rose is in extra brut, but with a very low dosage, is 1 or 2 grams.
Yeah,
so to keep this beautiful fruit and to finish with a beautiful, nice minerality.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. So the lay of the land in Cumières allows for some unusual opportunities. For example, the planting of some heirloom varietals and field blends. So you produce a remarkable prestige cuvée called Les Autrons, compiled of the key varietals, but also Petit Melier and Arban, planted on the same mid-slope plot in Cumières. It's a non-vintage and demonstrates a really powerful, complex wine with lots of fruitiness, spice, a firm structure, but also plenty of energy. It's an incredible wine. So what inspired you to create this cuvée?
Alors, it's a long time ago because I'm not too young. A long time ago, it was in 2001 with some good friend from wine grower from Champagne. We organized a trip in Alsace. And in Alsace, we met Jean-Michel Dice. And Jean-Michel Dice, as you know, it's the pioneer and the specialist of the field blend in Alsace. It's difficult in Dice domain to test one Gewürz or one Riesling because all is in a field blend. And when you speak with Jean-Michel, when you learn from here, when you test his wine, you say, wow, it's good. It's really good. You have a beautiful complexity, but a full balance in the wine. It's not too fruity, but it's a balance. When I came back here, I say, okay, in Champagne, in general, we have the Chardonnay in the chalky soil. We have the Pinot Noir in the soil with a lot of clay. the meunier with a sandy soil. And after we are going to blend all to do or to blend all in the same plots. So I decided to remove one beautiful plots of Pinot Noir in the plots of Les Outrans, and I decided to plant 5 different variety of grapes in 2005. So Pinot Noir, Meunier Chardonnay, and Arban, and Petit Melier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did people think that you were crazy for really nice Pinot Noir?
You know, in Champagne, when you change the law, you are always a little bit crazy. When you plant some trees or when you do something different. But you have a nice evolution with the young generation also in Champagne.
Yeah, but I think it's a very brave move because
Yeah.
obviously you had a vision. You thought maybe you could replicate it in Cumières. So how difficult or easy is it to grow Petit Melier and Arban in Cumières? Because, you know, Arban in particular is one of those varietals that really struggles for ripeness and it has to have the right terroir for it. So what makes Cumières particularly conducive to achieving the necessary ripeness for these grapes?
Fortunately, we are in Cumières, and Cumières is a ripe terroir. So I think it's more easy to get the good ripening in the Arban because we are in Cumières. If you plant the Arban in a cold terroir, I think it will be a little bit more difficult. And it's not individually; it's in all the different grapes. So you have the interaction of all from the roots. And now, for example, we harvest all the plots together.
Yeah, it's a field blend, right?
It's a field blend. So it's a field blend of all, and we harvest all the plots together, and you have a beautiful average of maturity. And so, sometimes perhaps the Arban will be a little bit less ripe than the Chardonnay, but the Arban will give you a little bit more acidity, and more than the Chardonnay. So it's you get really the balance.
Yeah, the collective balance.
Yes, the collective balance of all. It's Sasha can explain you after, but for us the field blend is one of the future of the Champagne. Soon next year we are going to plant a new plots also in field blend with a new project, because we are going to plant more and more field blend.
Yeah. So what do you think, Sasha, that Petit Melier and Arban brings to the blend of Les Outrans? Apart from acidity, it's got to be more than acidity, right? So what do you think it's bringing?
So I think, maybe Arban gives you a little bit more acidity, but to really calculate what the benefit is of the Arban, that's complicated because for me it's more a common work, an adaptation between all the grapes together, and we've seen that year after year because the plantation year was in 2005, and now we are in 2024, 25, and year after year we see that the window of maturity in between the different grape varieties goes closer and closer. At the beginning, Arban was more acidic than the Chardonnay, and more they
coming closer together.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
there's lots of potential then for the future of those LM varieties.
And that's nice because they grow together and they gives message into the soil and into the air atmosphere, and even against the sickness. For example, in 24, that was a high pressure of a mildew year. And in particular in this plot, we had, I think, 3 less time disease than another plot just next to this plot. That's why we think it's one of the response for the climate change also in the future.
I think when you have all the different variety of grapes, you have with the roots, you have a mycorrhiza in the roots, but it's not always the same mycorrhiza between the Arban, the Pinot Noir, and the roots help each different variety of grape. They share all together.
The community.
Yeah, the community, and you increase the natural immunity to help the vine against all the disease.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and perhaps it's one of the future solution for the global warming.
Yeah. And I mean, you're lucky that you've taken those actions quite early on in your journey.
Sure,
so you've got so many learnings
we
and
have
experience
the
already with it.
experience.
Exactly. So you are also well known for your meticulous maintaining of a perpetual reserve that you started back in 1970. So what is it about the perpetual reserve system that really appeals to you?
Alors, you have the good word, perpetual reserve, and not Solera, because in Champagne, we speak always of a perpetual reserve. Exactly, the perpetual reserve in our family is very, very old because my grandfather started with perpetual reserve in the beginning of the 1970s. Yes, in the no vintage Champagne, we have always a big part in general in our house is a 50% from this perpetual reserve. So you have to imagine we have a huge vat. So the best technique to keep very fresh and very young on the balanced perpetual reserve is for us is to keep in a huge vat, and the best is concrete, because concrete is very thick, and you haven't no oxidation, no difference of the temperature, because you have to know the perpetual reserve, the vat is always full. So you have always a summer, and in general in summer in Champagne is hot. So we need to have always the same temperature. And after you have of course, we renew this perpetual reserve of 50% each year, but you have the memory of the old vintage. The 1970, 71, 72 is very, very tiny. But this old vintage are here to educate the new vintage, the new one. So it's really, really complex. And this perpetual reserve is a no vintage, help us to have a beautiful, drinkable no vintage. And is our goal. In our no vintage, we want to have a immediate pleasure when you test this champagne.
Yeah, so it's about 50% reserve that goes into each of the bottles. Is that right for the current year? Each of the non-vintage around 50% reserves that comprise. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's quite extensive. That's a large proportion.
Yeah. We don't want to push more this proportion. So, for example, when we have bad year, when we have a low production, we don't want to take more of this perpetual reserve because we want to keep the history of this reserve.
For example, this year, we are going to prepare the blend for the Harvest 24, but the problem of the Harvest 24, we had been the mid-year, and so we harvested half normal harvest. And so it will be necessary for us to reduce the bottling this year to be able to keep a good volume of a perpetual reserve for the next year.
For the next time.
Yeah, because if we reduce after, we are going to change a lot the line of the house, because for 1 year it would be 60 or 70% of a perpetual reserve, and the year after it would be only 20. So it's impossible to do this.
Yeah, and as you say, the reserves are so complex, they're so rich, and it really does very easily change. Even a few percent can have a massive impact on the expression of the wine. So in closing out, I want to talk to you both about what do you think the future looks like for your domain. So, obviously you're opening up your business to embrace your daughter's involvement into the future, particularly Sasha, and you're going to have a big role going forward. So how do you see your family's story evolving?
First of all, I'm very happy now, and Sasha is with me to work from 1 year ago. Yes, because we share with Sasha and my wife, Karine, a lot of, new experience, and we speak a lot for the future, for the new projects. We explain you the new project of the field blend. Yes, the goal is always to try to be to work the most natural as possible in the vineyard, in the winemaking to do the minimum, and to respect the terroir the maximum. And after you do
But for that you have to work a lot also in the vineyards.
And after Sasha is here, so as you told us, I have 5 daughters. And the last is Azalée. Azalée, she's 21 years old, and she's a student in agronomic engineer in Lille. So in the 3rd year, So we don't know if...
Wait to see.
Yeah, we are waiting for her, but we have enough place. And Sasha, I think, wanted to have one sister close of her. Yeah.
Yeah, but for me, I'm very happy to be back. And I think my challenge for the future, so I really want to keep the values that all the generation before learn to me. And I think it's important to keep a lot of old practices by hand in the vineyards, to not put too much modernity to work. But I think the challenge is to find a good balance between these new
ideas and respect for heritage as well.
Yeah, and the past. Yes, and for the future, I think my challenge will be the global warming. So it's to find the best way in the vineyards to go in a good harvest every year, I think.
Yeah. All right. Sounds really good. Very promising future, I think. So just very lastly then, I know that you both know incredible winemakers here in Champagne, but further afield as well. So can you name one or two people that you really think exceptional at what they do and you really admire their work?
So this is a very difficult question because I love a lot of different wine from all over the world. Yeah. And you have a lot of fabulous grower in a different country and different vineyard. For me, I love one part of the Italy. It's the Piedmont. And you have a fabulous grower wine. So Sasha worked during a few months with the Rinaldi's sisters. Mm-hmm. And it's the kind of a Barolo or Barbera I like a lot, because it's super elegant, super fine, and is a great wine. But after, also, you have sometimes some emotion with a wine. And I tasted in Paris in a restaurant, a young grower I didn't know, from Muscadet. Is Jean-Baptiste Hardy. And c'est ça le nom? Okay. Is Jean-Baptiste Hardy. And wow, it's super good. And I didn't know this guy. He's a young grower, and I say, okay, congratulations, because he did a great right.
Yeah. Well, I think just to maintain an open mind sometimes, and just to try new things all the time, try all new things, and not just to go back to your favorites.
Yeah, it was, I spoke just before of dice. I love dice too, so in Alsace, so yeah.
Fantastic. And what about you, Sasha? Is there anybody who inspires you?
During the different experience, I think when growers that can't take out of my mind is Marie-Thérèse Chapa in Switzerland, in the region of Vallée, because for me, I think 40 years ago, she has done a revolution in her region to start biodynamic and biologic practices in a terroir where it's very, very difficult, quite impossible. And she never stopped, and she goes straight, and even now she's 65, and she runs into the vineyards.
Really?
She's gardening, so I love that.
It's her passion. Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you very much for your time today. It's been a really fascinating deep dive into Cumières and into your domain and what you do, and it's really impressive. You've obviously got quite a few champagnes in your portfolio now. And I think, it's a testament to all of the hard work that you're doing within the vineyards and really getting the very best expression that you possibly can out of all of that. So it's to our benefit and joy that we get to appreciate all of that. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Vine & Bubble is a boutique and independent information source dedicated exclusively to telling the real story of Champagne. It was launched by me, Sarah Underdown, in November 2018, after almost a decade of working in the champagne industry as a recognised writer, educator and presenter. Vine & Bubble brings together a network of Australian wine journalists, sommeliers, educators and industry representatives as regular contributors. As a team of champagne lovers and communicators, we are thrilled to share our united passion with wine-loving audiences. To read more about Champagne, to subscribe to events in Australia and learn more about opportunities to join us for experiences in Champagne, visit vineandbubble.com and register your details.